This is beginning next week, and it's something that's been fought for a very, very long time. Thousands of people had their lives turned upside down by contaminated blood supplies that were given to patients through the NHS. Around 2,500 people died just in the UK, and one of them was Jason Evans' father, Jonathan. Now, Jason was only 4 when his dad died after being infected with HIV through treatment with contaminated blood. All of this happened, as I mentioned, a long time ago. This is 25 years ago now. But Monday finally sees the start of a public inquiry, which relatives, and Jason in particular, have been campaigning hard for over the years. We can talk to Jason this morning. Hello, Jason.
Hi, good morning. Good to speak to you.
You too. And his legal representative, Des Collins, is with us as well, who's acting for around 800 other victims of the so-called tainted blood scandal. Hello, Des.
Good morning.
Jason, it's worth pointing out, I was saying there, this is something that you have been fighting for a long time. Having this inquiry was by no means a done deal, was it?
It really wasn't. I personally got really heavily involved in this in around 2015. And I had no idea at that time the kind of journey that was in store for me. I primarily went into doing research, campaigning, meeting with MPs, and then in the beginning of 2017 is when I met Des Collins and Collins Solicitors, and it's really thanks to them we were able to bring a group legal action. We were able to assert pressure to get a public inquiry through politicians and campaigning. And it's quite amazing to think about where we are now compared to where we were even just a couple of years ago. And of course, the struggle that's gone on by a lot of people over the last 30 years plus.
Yeah. Tell me why, Jason, this is so personal to you, where your motivation comes from, because as we said, your dad was involved in this and he died when you were only 4 years old.
Sure. So, I mean, the scandal itself revolves around a product called Factor VIII concentrate. And this was a medicine that became commonplace treatment for haemophilia in the 70s and 80s. And this medicine replaced the previous treatment, cryoprecipitate, which was essentially much like you'd have in a blood donation. It's a freely given donation by a volunteer donor through the NHS. The difference with these new medicines that came on the market was that they were made by mixing together the blood plasma donations of tens of thousands of people. And of course, you only needed one infected donation to contaminate the whole batch. So the risk was massive. And my father was born with haemophilia, much like most of the people who used this medicine that was pushed and sold by the pharmaceutical companies. And as a result of using that product, my father was infected with both hepatitis C and HIV, which then progressed to AIDS. And he died in 1993 when I was 4 years old as a result of those infections. And that's, of course, why I initially became involved in this, because, growing up as a child through my teen years into my 20s, there was always this burning question of how could this have happened? And it was there when I was 10, it was there when I was 15, when I was 20, I'm 29 now, and it's still there. And for me, and for the thousands of other people who would be paying very close attention to this inquiry, that's what we want to know, is how could this have happened?
Des, why has it been so difficult for the people who were caught up in this to actually get this inquiry? What kind of pushback has there been over the years?
I think the pushback has been through successive government administrations who quite simply didn't want to admit to what had gone wrong. And in the early stages, when, in fairness, people weren't quite sure what had gone wrong, the cry that went up was, well, nothing went wrong at all. Now, having nailed their colours to the mast right at the start of this, successive administrations were not prepared to change. It's a bit like a schoolboy telling a lie. You tell one lie and then you can't really go back on it because it develops over time, and that's what happened here. The successive government administrations, successive departments of health from time to time would just not admit what had happened, and this was against the background of material knowledge coming out in inquiries in Ireland and in Canada and in Europe, but this country resolutely, and indeed in Scotland in the Penrose inquiry, but the United Kingdom resolutely refused to recognise that something had really gone wrong and was quite prepared to maintain that position over 35 years.
So, as we said, the public inquiry is going to start on Monday. What kind of potential conclusions could be reached, and what are the many people that you represent hoping for from this?
Essentially, there are two sides to this inquiry. There's the side which is the humanity side, where a lot of people have got nothing left but the stories which they can tell, and this gives them an opportunity to tell those stories, and that is very important. It's a cathartic process, and they feel relieved that at last someone is listening to them, and that is very, very important. On another level, however, it's absolutely essential that matters don't end there, because we have to, if this inquiry is going to work properly, and I hope it will, we have to determine what went wrong, why it went wrong, how it was allowed to be covered up, and how we can take steps to ensure that it doesn't happen again. It's been said before that the generation who will be at court or at the inquiry on Monday feel that they owe a debt to the last generation and an obligation to the next in order to determine what went wrong and make sure it can't happen again.
Jason, what are you hoping to get from this? Because obviously what happened to you at the age of 4 and losing your dad, nothing will change that. What will bring you some kind of feeling of not even necessarily closure, just having done the job that you set out to do?
I think, when I got involved in this, I had really one relatively simple goal, and that was the Penrose inquiry that Des just referred to, which went on in Scotland. It made this statement when it reported that said little could or should have been done differently. Now, I acknowledge there are differences in the circumstances between Scotland and England. However, my personal goal was to put it on the official record based on the evidence that I had looked at and seen, that there was a lot that could and should have been done differently, and that this event that took place that almost wiped out a whole generation of people with haemophilia was avoidable. And that really has been still now my mainstay goal, that we want that on the official record. I think that where the inquiry could reach lots of conclusions about holding people to account, identifying responsibilities, making recommendations for recompense, criminal investigations, etc. All those things would be welcome. But as I say, my personal goal has never changed. We want that official record to say that this was avoidable and it should never have happened.
It could last sometime between 2 and 5 years. It's going to be a long haul, Jason. It'll be, I imagine, very emotional as well for you.
I think it's going to be, for many people, a very difficult process, and it will be a long process. I mean, the estimates on how long this will take vary between anywhere from 2.5 to 5 years. And, we were aware of that coming into this. And I'm personally fully prepared to see this through to the very end. And I think, it sticks in my mind constantly that I do have to try as best I can, however difficult it may be, to find a separation between my emotional involvement in this and also my role as a campaigner, as the founder of an organisation that's a core participant, and the research and what really needs to be done to do right by the community. And I will try as best as I can to assist everybody in any way I can.
Jason, thank you. Jason Evans, whose dad died when he was just 4, and Des Collins as well, who's Jason's legal representative, and in fact the legal representative for around 800 other victims of the so-called tainted blood scandal. That inquiry, as I said, starts on Monday. It is not a short-term thing. It's due to last for a few years, and you'll no doubt hear a lot more about it, both once it opens and as it continues over the next few weeks and months as well.